What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the Havoc Hour. I'm your host, as always, Reek Havoc. We are on episode 11. Past my milestone 10. I'm happy. I miss y'all, man. It's been a wild couple days out here in this U.S. of A. Unless you've been living under a rock, you know what's been going on here. Uprisings, protests, riots, whatever you want to call them. COVID took some vacation days. They are tagging out, and racism said, "Let me tag in. Let me get some of that." So it's it's been a heavy few days. So I took some time off and kind of just soaked this all in. But everybody, stay safe, be blessed. Getting into some crazy times here, and as always, Black Lives Matter. But as always, I'm back to bring you the hot topics, and we're gonna have some real deep discussions today, man. I mean, from the NBA getting back into form now, just a month away from resuming action. It looks like um, Drew Brees, of course. We're gonna talk about that, but it's a deeper issue than Drew Brees. It's a lot to get into there, but I'm gonna start off with just last night, UFC 250. That was a hell of an event. It's maybe too early, but I don't care. I'm gonna do it anyway. I think this is the front runner for pay per view of the year, for the show of the year, whatever you want to call it. Um, this had everything from top to bottom. It was a phenomenal event. I mean, headlined by the bantamweights at 135, they put on a masterclass in their division. They let the world know that they are the division to watch in the UFC because, my God, they put on the clinics. But I'm going to jump right into it, right from the jump. Opening fight, the Sugar Show, my man Sugar Sean O'Malley, put Eddie Wineland to sleep early in the first round, or toward the end of the first round, rather. And I mean, what more needs to be said, man? You gotta give my guy some real competition. You know, guys can't become contenders and future champions until they face real challenges. You know, obviously, Sugar is fresh in. I mean, he's got a couple years in, but he's took some time off with injuries. We gotta step the level of competition up. Sugar Sean got a whole arsenal that he hasn't really gotten to use much of yet because he's just decimating these guys left and right. He's 12-0. Um, I would say the next fight he has should be somebody in the top 15. Get him a chance to get in the rankings because this is this is ridiculous now. I love it. I expect to see it roll on. This guy is definitely one of the up and coming prospects. He's going to be a problem, But this is just the start. You know what I'm saying? This is just to kick the show off. We still got two more fights in this division to cover, but I'm gonna get to that in a second. Next fight up was Neil Magny versus Anthony Rocco Martin. This was really the only fight that you kind of saw going back and forth. Honestly, it went to a decision. Neil Magny won by decision. I had some questions about that. I thought that Rocco was kind of picking his spots. He was digging in on Neil in those first two rounds, and obviously he needed a solid third round to even tip the scales a little bit. But when they said unanimous, I'm like, ooh, I don't know about that one. And even Rocco was shocked, like, whoa, what are you talking about, unanimous? So, that was questionable. It was a strong third round by Magny. I'll give him that. But in the grand scheme of things, I think it was kind of just a little too late. So I don't know what the judges saw. I'm not a judge, thank God, because I don't know what that would be like in their shoes. But they saw something I didn't, so I don't know what to tell you, man. That's how that goes down. But yeah, the welterweights had their little go of it in the middle of the show. But then it was back to the real show, which was 135. And so the next fight, Aljamain, Sterling, and Corey Sandhagen back at 135. Boy, there's nothing else that needs to be said here. Aljamain put on a clinic within a minute and a half, jumped right out on top of this dude from the very beginning, pounced and jumped on, got his back, put the submission in, he tapped out and then went to sleep. Corey Sandhagen did. So there's not a debate anymore at the top in terms of 135. There's a murderer's row of them, and the 35-pound division is full of killers. But at the top right now that Henry Cejudo is left, which he is smart for doing that. But now that he's gone, at the very top should be Aljamain Sterling, and I believe Peter Yan. We'll see, what happens with his fight. Apparently, he's set to fight Aldo, and that may or may not be for the vacant 135-pound belt. But if we're making any championship fights, it has to include this man. The next time he fights should be for the belt. I don't care what happens with the other fight that's being planned at the top of the rankings, but the next time Aljamain fights, it needs to be for the belt. Point blank, period. It's criminal. I'm going to say the same thing I said about Francis Ngannou. The next time he fights, there should not be any fights happening unless they're for a belt. Plain and simple. And then we moved along to the co-main event to close out the 135 showcase. Cody No Love, Garbrandt, my man, against Rafael Assunção. I gotta tell you, man, I haven't seen Cody look this good since he won the belt, and I'm happy about that. Shout out to Coach Mark Henry, definitely. I mean, he has ironed out a lot of the wrinkles that Cody had when he started to go into the slump. He definitely saw a more focused fighter. Wasn't baiting into a shootout or playing off emotions. He was laser focused. He was quick, decisive. Just didn't get caught up in the traps like he was in the last few fights. He had been on a bad trail with the last 3 fights, unfortunately. But this was impressive. And, almost made it out of the first round, looking solid. But Rafael just walked himself into a trap, and Cody with possibly the knockout of the year. Definitely the knockout of the night. I mean, him and Sugar Sean are like right there together. Everybody got performance of the night bonuses. So, I mean, that was... wow, we're going to be talking about that for a while. Like, there is dynamite in that man's hand, clearly. No Love is back, and he's going to be on a mission to get back to the top. So that concluded the 135-pound showcase, and my God, like I said, they are just killers across the board. Like, Henry Cejudo was smart. He left the game at the right time because he would have been in trouble. I mean, between these 3 guys, Garbrandt, Aljamain, Sugar Sean. Now, granted, Sugar Sean's not ranked yet, but I mean, he has all the talent in the world. He'll definitely be up there. And that's not even to mention the rest of the guys. Petr Yan, Jose Aldo, if he's staying at 135, I guess now. But there's so many guys that are on the way up to the top. And we didn't even mention Dominic Cruz. He had a pretty solid performance against Cejudo until that finish that was arguably early stoppage. So, you expect to see him in the mix with a bunch of these guys. So it's going to be sink or swim at the top. It definitely is. So kudos, shout out to all of the 135ers who came to play last night. Great show. And of course, our main event was the feast, is what I would call it. The Lioness Amanda Nunes went to town to face Felicia Spencer. Let me be clear about this. Um, I truly respect the heart and soul that Felicia Spencer showed last night. Because if I was the coach or in her corner, I might have called this fight right around the fourth round. She took punishment, man. She took massive amounts of punishment from Amanda Nunes. She stayed in as long as she could, and she was trying to find an opening. It just wasn't there. It was not there. Amanda Nunes is in a class all by herself. You know, I think the only person who's really found a bit of an opening with her that could be exploited was Jermaine Durandamy in their last fight, the last fight Nunes had, and she was very close to exploiting that opening, but it just was not enough. I mean, this was all Nunes from start to finish. She won every single round. She just pummeled Felicia Spencer, who, for her credit, never once looked like she was quitting, never looked like she was backing down. It just, you can't get inside. You can't do anything with this one. So, respect to the heart that she showed. This is now twice she's gone 5 rounds with the baddest woman in the division. She faced Cyborg at one point, went 5 rounds with her. That was a loss, but still, it's Chris Cyborg. You go 5 rounds with her and you survive. God bless you. And now 5 rounds with Amanda Nunes. I mean, all respect in the world to it. That was a lot of heart, But there's only one GOAT, and she has now successfully defended 2 different titles, 2 different weight divisions, cleaned out 2 different weight divisions. There's nothing left. There really isn't. Amanda's going to take some considerable time off, I would imagine. Her and her wife are expecting their first child soon. There's no challenges left. You might say a Megan Anderson. I would say Valentina Shevchenko at this point. She's a 25er at this stage in the game, but she is the only person to date that has really posed a serious challenge to Nunes. The only fight that it's a game of inches with them two. Every time it's a game of inches, and Amanda just inches past Valentina. I'd say if you continue this career, which she's in the prime of her career, she does not need to retire. She doesn't need to walk away. That's her decision. It's her prerogative. But if you're looking to challenge yourself at this stage in the game, you got to go with Valentina one more time. It's 2-0 by the scorecards because every fight's ended by decision. But I would say that's the last real challenge you have. Give Valentina one more shot. And then, if you want to continue killing these women off, so be it. But I can't see anything else for her at this stage in the game. There's nothing left. She's beaten all of the best. She's beaten every woman who has held UFC gold. Every single one of them. Ronda Rousey, Holly Holm, Chris Cyborg, Misha Tate, and that's just the champions. There's also Sarah McMahon, Shayna Baszler, twice Jermaine Durandamy now, twice Valentina. I mean, what do you got left? What do you got left? But I am certainly not advocating that she walk away. love watching Amanda Nunes. It is always a treat to watch greatness, the greatest. So please, by all means, if you want to stay and keep trashing everybody, please do it. It'll make it all the, if she ever does lose, it'll make it that much of a bigger moment when it does happen. And I'm hoping I don't see that either. But, anything can happen. So, it was a wild night of fights. And, like I said, I would say right away, early on, this was probably the best card of the year. We still got a ways to go before 2020 mercifully ends. But when it does, I've got a good feeling like this might be the card of the year. Dana White put together a damn good show. And speaking of Dana White, that brings me to my next topic. So, and everybody has their mixed opinions about the man. He's a businessman. He does what's best for the game, best for his fighters. And he's committed to putting on the show no matter what. That's Dana White in a nutshell. The issues come where you talk about fighters and, having their value. Feeling appreciated, feeling they're getting what they're worth, and I think that conversation is really coming to a head now. In the past week, John Jones has made some very interesting comments. The start of which was the discussions about a super fight between him and Francis Ngannou. Now, Francis is in purgatory at the moment. The division is being held up with him first and last in line for the title shot. Stipe and DC are still working through the kinks of finalizing a third bout between them for the heavyweight title. But Francis Ngannou is first in line. He should not fight again unless it's for the championship. But while he's waiting, there's nothing else for him to do. He's beaten everyone who's a viable contender behind him. So, apparently John Jones was watching that performance at UFC 249 just last month. And he's intrigued by the notion of moving up to heavyweight. He's been talking about it for years, moving up to heavyweight, taking on some challenges there. And so after a nice little war of Twitter words, they wanted to enter discussions about setting that up. John Jones, the heavyweight, to fight Francis Ngannou. I don't think there's any question. We'd all pay money to see that. Problem was, apparently UFC wasn't willing to pay the money to make it happen. John Jones took to Twitter to let the people know that before the negotiations even began, they weren't willing to meet his numbers, to take the risk. Because that's really what it is for John. It's a new weight class. He's assuming more risk by going up. It's a lot more dangerous, there. I mean, his skill set dictates that he would do just fine. But, again, the risk is there. He's the light heavyweight champion. And I would imagine this wouldn't be for anything in particular other than just a showcase. But it's the ball would be in his court. And for Francis, if you're not giving him at least an interim bout for an interim belt, there's nothing else out there for him. So you might as well give the guy a good check. But apparently, according to both sides, nothing materialized. They can't agree that, hey, this is worth money. I'm worth the money. And you know what my price is. UFC wasn't willing to meet it. So, long story short, this suddenly turned into a conversation where John Jones said just a few days ago, I'm relinquishing the light heavyweight championship. The division can go on without me. I have nothing left to prove there. I've cleaned out the best of the best. Let Jan Blachowicz and Dominic Reyes fight for the light heavyweight championship, and I'll see you guys in 2021. If Israel Adesanya decides to step up to the challenge, and there hasn't been an official word from the UFC about it, but verbally, John is saying, "Yeah, I'm giving up the belt, and I'm walking away from the game for a moment." Francis just respectfully bowed out and said, I guess I'll see you guys when I see you." But this is highlighting a massive issue because, people talk about being woke mentally. These fighters, a lot of them are getting woke financially. Now the story is about Jorge Masvidal because he, isn't feeling like he's being paid what he's worth. And, this is a guy that's been in the game for well over 10, 15 years now. It's a real touchy situation because obviously he wants to fight. That's who he is. It's in his nature. But you have to protect yourself. You have to make sure that you secure your bag. So for Jorge, for John, for a lot of guys, I mean, now is that time where all of this is going to come to a head. And the biggest thing that I take away from all of this is that this started 6 years ago almost, or 5 years ago, I'm sorry. Because going into the summer of 2015, at a summer press conference, Conor McGregor introduced us all to Red Panty Night. Meaning, I am the jackpot, I'm the lottery, I'm the money fight. And it was always about money. Conor McGregor was never in the fight game just to fight. Conor was in the fight game to eclipse certain numbers. He was in the fight game to secure all the bags. He was there to monetize the moment. He always had a plan bigger than just the next fight. It was about how much can I secure for myself. So when he started saying these things, like, I'm the money fight, I'm going to make you rich if you fight me. It's funny that people laughed when he said that. Fast forward 5 years later, there's not a soul in the UFC that wouldn't take a fight with Conor McGregor right now because he's the highest paid. So he spoke almost prophetically about the future. He told all those guys up on the dais when they had that press conference, listen, I can change your life, man. If you sign to fight me, it's a celebration. It's Red Panty Night for the wife at home. And what happened in advance of that? What happened later on? A few months later in December, he beat Jose Aldo, greatest featherweight of all time, undefeated for 10 years, beat him, won the featherweight championship, and then he went on to UFC 205. Well, after a few bouts with Nate Diaz, which was his highest payday to date, split the series with him 1-1. One of the greatest fights in UFC history. But that chapter was paused at 1-1 apiece for each of them. He moved on to UFC 205. That started a series of the highest numbers UFC has ever seen. And I'm talking, just to give you some context here, right? The gates and the buy rates that Conor McGregor generates are higher than anyone else in the business. 205. Their gate was 17.7 million. That's still that still has not been eclipsed yet. That number. The buy rate was 1.3. 229 years later, after going off to fight Floyd Mayweather in a boxing exhibition fight, and he comes back and he fights Khabib Nurmagomedov for the lightweight championship. That gate was 17.2. The buy rate was 2.4. Again, these numbers have not been hit again. Not by John, not by Jorge, not by Woodley and Usman, not by DC, Stipe. No one else hit these numbers. Even back in January, this past January, UFC 246, that gate was 11 million. So, just off of that alone, Conor kind of woke everyone up to say, listen, man, you guys are fighting just to fight. I'm fighting so I don't have to fight anymore. Because for as much as he dedicated himself to his craft, he knew that his entertainment value was just increasing constantly. And when your entertainment value increases, so does your net worth. If you heard him speak at one of the press conferences for the Mayweather fight, he told the crowd, he's like, listen, man, I got into this game 4 years ago. And 4 years later, I'm about to quadruple my net worth in a half a fight. Basically, like, because he's an MMA fighter. He got into the MMA game in the fight game in 2013, professionally. And now, in one night, he quadruples his net worth with a boxing exhibition match. No elbows, no kicks, it's all the stuff that he'd have to worry about in the UFC. Quadruple my net worth just from this. And the conversations like that were what made people say, oh, you know what? He's right. There's value. I gotta get my value. Because wins and losses matter. Style points matter. You know, your character, your persona, whatever you bring, you know, in terms of, you know, the verbal stuff, that matters. So within the last couple of years now, all of a sudden you see guys saying, well, wait a minute now. This guy has been making all this money, and he's nowadays barely even see him. Last time Conor fought was in January. Now, just last night after the show, he's talking about retiring again. Because there's nothing exciting for him. Nothing enticing. In other words, they're not meeting his price. And that seems to be a common theme with all these fighters. Henry Cejudo just retired last month in the prime of his career. He's like 30 years old. In the prime of his career. Now, again, I don't blame him. If you see what's waiting for him at 135, it's hell on earth. I don't blame him. But he's in the prime of his career. And it would have made a lot of money if he would have stayed. But he knows his value. If you listen to the press conference after UFC 249, he said, you know, people were asking him, you know, is this a money thing? Is this a money issue? He said, Dana knows the number. He knows what it is. And he wants to talk that number. Maybe we'll do something. But I'm good. I'm happy. I'm ready to walk away. In other words, sure, he might be content with walking away. But the reality is, what am I fighting for outside of my pride if you're not securing my future for me? So, Cejudo, Masvidal, John Jones, even, and I hate to say this, even Colby Covington, because that's a guy that ran through the welterweight division. He lost to Usman in his championship fight, but one of the biggest things going into that was He's like, man, listen, I changed my. This is I'm just speaking facetiously here. I changed my persona. I'm not quiet anymore. I'm outspoken, which another word for being a douche. You know, I'm getting attention. I'm getting all these interviews. I'm all over the place. Colton Covington made a name for himself. He produced, a pro wrestling style gimmick, and that has gotten attention, and it's gotten all these eyes and ears all over him. That's selling. Now, whether people are with him or whether people want to see him get beat up, they want to see him fight. That's that's promoting. That's marketing right there. So when you do that, whether it's ethical, whether it's right or not, that's producing dollars. So he sat down going into the Usman fight saying that, listen, they weren't, I had a number that I have in mind that I feel I've earned, and they weren't trying to meet that. And that's why negotiations kept stalling and everything like that. And even now, this talks about him, fighting Tyron Woodley or Leon Edwards or whatever, or Masvidal. But none of these fights materialize. And of course, the common thing is going to be to say that he's running scared from these guys. Listen, that's neither here nor there. At the end of the day, the big issue is these guys are knowing their worth. And I thought it was just shocking that John Jones is one of the main people that are saying, listen, I can go wherever. And he can. He's still not even in his mid-30s yet. Still in his prime. He can walk into any promotion right now and make bank. Headline shows. So I think this just opened Pandora's box for Dana White and the UFC, and I think it truthfully was their biggest fear, because up until Conor McGregor, you didn't see a lot of conversation about fighters getting paid what they're worth. I mean, there was the discrepancy about men to women out earning one or the other. Simple contract negotiations, but it wasn't as much of a conversation as it is today. Today is the day they were worried about. Because these guys are thinking proactively. They're thinking towards the future. It's not so much about the retirement. It's about being secured for retirement. That's what Conor's mindset was. Conor was thinking 10 years ahead into the future, way back in 2015, 2014. He wasn't speaking just to be cocky. Yeah, he had a cocky persona, but it was all about, listen, I'm going to make sure I'm set. When he won the championship, the lightweight championship from Eddie Alvarez, the first double champ, he went into that press conference and said, listen, I want what I've earned now. I want some stake in the company. I want equity. Because rightfully so, he, proclaimed he has earned more than anyone else in the UFC. He's their highest paid star. He has earned the UFC more money than they've ever seen before. And the numbers have gone through the roof ever since he made it to the top. That's called knowing your worth. And it's funny that ever since that conversation was had 4 years ago, you see Conor so very little now. Because why? Conor said, look, if I'm not going to get what I've earned, if I'm not going to get equity, if I'm not going to get a stake in the company, I'm going to go earn a bigger check. And then what happened? 1 year later, he was fighting Floyd Mayweather, making $100 million. And now you have to pay big money to see Conor fight if you're the UFC. If you want Conor to fight, you have to pay top dollar. Plain and simple. That's a power move. And that's what the rest of these guys are learning how to do. And that's going to be a problem for the Dana Whites of the world and UFCs when they want to, just give guys what they think is right. So I think they're in trouble. I mean, they're still the biggest game in town. They're not going anywhere. But I think it's very telling that these big names are now saying, "Listen, I'm not getting what I'm worth," and that's a problem. So that's that's really gonna that's really gonna turn into an issue going forward, if you ask me. So UFC, be very careful, because the next few months are going to be very telling. But moving right along here. Now we're going to get a little bit deeper, because we'll transition over to the NFL, more specifically with the Drew Brees situation. So here's the deal. Just for full context here, unbiased, specifically directed to this situation. He was asked in an interview, because there was talk of players potentially kneeling again next season as a result of the protests and everything like that in the wake of George Floyd. He was asked about the possibility of players protesting again this year. His response to that was, paraphrasing here, "Don't respect anyone who disrespects the flag." That, of course, spun the carousel around, and players across the league, teammates of his, just everyone just let him have it. Rightfully so, because that was a short-sighted comment, plain and simple. It was short-sighted. It was just baseless, and it was insensitive. That's the big thing about it. It was highly insensitive to this plight of the African American man and woman. So he has since apologized, and is feeling empathetic and hurt by the way his words impacted everyone else. But the fact of the matter is, Drew and what he said really only highlighted a bigger issue within the league. And this is what it is. In 2016, Colin Kaepernick made a decision. He was fed up completely with what had been going on in the country. This, at the time, we were dealing with Michael Brown, Sandra Bland, those incidents. And Colin had just said enough is enough. There needs to be a statement made. So, the statement wasn't favorable. It wasn't what people wanted to see. But he said, "You know what? I'm going to do it anyway." So he says, during the national anthem, there's this pledge to America: "I'm going to protest." And initially, what happened was he sat down for the national anthem. Now, remind everybody here, Marshawn Lynch has never stood for the national anthem. So the fact that it was even brought up was just stupid. But it wasn't the headline story. It wasn't big news yet. The only person who really saw it and really took to heart what happened was a man by the name of Nate Boyer, retired Army Green Beret. He saw that Kaepernick had sat down for the national anthem, and it bothered him as a serviceman, as someone who fought for the country. But unlike people in the media, the sharks and the trolls online, he said, I want to know what's in this guy's mind. Why does he feel he needs to take this approach? So he reached out to Colin. They had a conversation, had some dialogue. Colin spoke to him about how he felt, how he feels America treats people like him, why this bothers him, and the message that he's trying to convey with what he's doing. And Nate, now this obviously isn't real conversation, but I'm just giving you an idea of what the conversation went. This is pretty much what happened. Nate said, you know what? I don't understand it. I've never walked a mile in your shoes. I can't relate to your plight. However, as a veteran, as someone who served this country, I fought for your rights as an American, for your freedoms as an American. Part of those rights and freedoms is the right to protest, is the right to express yourself. So, while I'm not a fan of the moment that you're choosing to protest, you have the right to do it. Now, what I would simply ask is that instead of sitting for the national anthem, we have something we do in the military to honor our fallen soldiers, where we get down on one knee. It's a sign of reverence, sign of respect. So I would appreciate it if you were choosing this moment to protest. I'd appreciate it if you took a knee. I don't know how that would be received, but I'm saying, me as a man who served this country, who respects what it stands for, who loves his country, I would respect it if you're choosing to protest, go on one knee, and I think that would be more acceptable. Colin said, out of respect for you, that's what I'll do. I'll take a knee. And next thing you know, all across the media, Colin Kaepernick takes a knee for the national anthem. And he immediately told the press why. I do not feel like showing reverence to a country that does not respect or value my kind, my people. My people are being killed, prosecuted, oppressed, just based off of what we look like. I cannot stand up and show reverence and respect to a country that does that. That's what he said in the media. Paraphrasing him, but he spoke to the media. And yet, in the aftermath of that, Donald Trump, the media, just every pundit across mainstream media you can think of, turned this into a conversation of, he's disrespecting the flag, he's disrespecting America, he's disrespecting all of us. And when enough voices speak, they affect certain things, like, for example, the bottom line. Fans, trolls, and just ignorant people all across the country said, we're going to boycott the NFL, we're going to boycott, we're not going to watch the games, we're not going to go to the games if Colin Kaepernick is playing. The owner's hands were forced. They said, he's bad for business, he's got to go. So after his contract ran up, the owners essentially made a pact within themselves to say he can't be signed anywhere else. To this day, Colin Kaepernick has not seen the NFL field. Now, I tell this story because today, in 2020 now, 4 years after the initial protest, The murder of George Floyd has turned America on its heels. Everywhere across the 50 states, and even in other countries, you see protests. People standing together, black, white, Asian, Hispanic, whatever race or color you want to be, they're all coming together to say this needs to stop. This is enough. Right? And as a result of that, all of a sudden, now the big corporations, big businesses are saying, yeah, this needs to stop. Black Lives Matter. Enough is enough. Culminating with the NFL. Just the other day, Roger Goodell got on camera, the NFL commissioner, to condemn racism, to condemn the systematic oppression, police brutality, in support of Black lives. But I didn't hear one mention of Colin Kaepernick. I didn't hear an apology. I didn't hear anything. Which means you don't really care. But it's popular now. It's the popular thing to do to support this movement. If you really cared, Colin Kaepernick never would have lost his job. Colin Kaepernick would have got his job back. Let me be clear. I'm not trying to do, a complete, unbiased view of Colin Kaepernick, because I don't think he went about everything the right way. This past few months ago, where they arranged the workout and things got misconstrued. Yeah, I know they tried to really to do him dirty, but there was a way that he should have handled it. I didn't like the way he handled it, so I'm not the biggest rah-rah supporting fan of him. I respect him as a man, but the way he handled this most recent situation with him getting back in the NFL, it wasn't the right way to go about it. And I think that attributes more to the team he has around him. But that's neither here nor there. The point is, he would not have been blacklisted. He would not have been blackballed. He would not have been cast out had it not been, for the lack of support. That was the time to show you cared. Now it's just lip service. And for me, and anyone else that's conscious as an NFL fan, as a football fan, as someone who patronizes this product that is the NFL, it's too little too late. It's not it right now. It's really not. So I think that's the bigger issue here, because you could take a Drew Brees, somebody who has done so much for their community of New Orleans. It's a guy that came to New Orleans right after Katrina, the catastrophe that was Hurricane Katrina, and has done so much for the community that's predominantly black. So for him, you could take a situation like his and say, you know what, this is the problem right here. Statements like that, mindsets like that are the problem. And you'd be right. Absolutely. But what about everybody else? Because you could reach a Drew Brees. And, we'll see. It's about behavior, about changed behavior as opposed to words. So we'll see how this goes. But apparently, it seems as though you can reach the mind of a Drew Brees. And you can teach him, you can educate him. And he can become an asset and an ally to what we as a people are trying to do. But what about everybody else? Where are your Tom Brady's in these conversations? Where are your Peyton Mannings? I know Aaron Rodgers said a little something the other day, but these prominent figures, Drew Brees is one of the faces of the league. He's also white. Where is everybody else in that? Because what's their mentality? Do they think like Drew Brees? And more importantly, the owners, we know they do. Jerry Jones was threatening to cut people that was kneeling for the national anthem. You know where he stands on this. If you know anything about Jerry Jones down in Dallas, you know where he stands. This this is so much bigger than Drew Brees. This was just, a public issue because the media took it and ran with it. And again, I absolutely agree that, you know, the criticism that he got for it's fair. It really is. Because he needed to be told, listen, this is not okay. He needed to be told that. But it needs to be deeper than that. If you reach one, you teach one. You reach Drew, you teaching him, we'll see what he's learned. But it's on to the next one now. You see black players everywhere are standing up. Everyone else needs to follow suit. You don't see a lot of guys like a Chris Long that stood next to Malcolm Jenkins in protest when these all kicked off, when they were together on the Eagles. You don't see enough of those. The common phrase nowadays is silence is betrayal. If you're not speaking on this, you're part of the problem. Because that means you don't see it. And again, what is your mindset when it comes to these issues and beyond? This is something way bigger than just one person saying, the flag was being disrespected. And it's really time. It's really time to call these prominent figures to the carpet. And the conversation about the flag, all this hijacking the narrative and the issue, that's got to stop. This was never about a flag. This was never about a song, which it's racist in its nature. It talks about slaves, the real Star Spangled Banner. You research the real, raw first draft of it is about slaves. It was never about that. It was never about that. It was never about the flag. It was just about us saying, this gotta stop. It was just one person sacrificing his livelihood to say, we matter. And we need all of you to start acting like we do. Because we're not being treated like it. That's the problem. That's the problem. So, to close out the show, I'm going to just give the rundown here of the big news earlier in the week, and that is that next month, the NBA will officially return. Wonderful. What's going to happen is not everyone, 22 teams out of the 30 will be invited out to Disney World in Orlando. They have a property out there in which they will create a venue for everyone to play. So 22 teams will come out and they will play 8 seeding games just to finish out the regular season. After those games, the seeds 1 through 7 will be locked up. After that, um, a seed, the number 9 seed, if they're 4 games out of the 8th seed, which is the last seeding to get in, then there will be a series of play-in games for those final 8 seeds. And once those 8 seeds get locked up, then we will proceed with the playoffs under the normal format. So, these are the parameters we have to bring the NBA back. Now, obviously, it means that, if your team didn't do nothing this year, they're out. Plain and simple. There's mixed emotions about this. A lot of sympathy. I don't have any. Let's be honest here. If we were about 60 games in when everything just halted. So at that point in time, if you're not in it, then you just ain't going. Plain and simple. If you're only won about 16, 20 games, you're probably not going. Because this was after All-Star break. If after All-Star break you're not in one of the seeds or you're not vying for it, you may as well pack it in early. And obviously this goes for those Knickerbockers who I'm on shaky ground with, apparently, currently. Yeah, about ready to pack my bags on that one. But anywho, this is good. This is really good. At the end of the day, the best of the best are going to get there. If you're on the fringe, you will have a shot. Plain and simple. I like the format. I think it's innovative, and I think, the crazy thing about this whole pandemic is this offered a chance to really create some change and some new ideas going forward. So, I mean, I'm all for this idea for this format. Obviously, what I want to see is the Lakers take this championship this season. Got to do it for Kobe, man. You got to do it. I think that's kind of been lost and everything else has been going on lately, but we did lose a Titan, a legend, a Hall of Famer, and to honor that man's memory, the Lakers got to win a championship. Bron, AD, Rondo, y'all got to do it. Y'all got to do it, man. But it's gonna be crazy. It's gonna be a wild ride going forward. You still got Milwaukee, you got the Sixers, you got the Celtics. I think the Nets are still alive in this too. They'll definitely have a chance to play in, but but Kyrie and KD have officially been deactivated. They're going to be moving on to 2021. But I'm looking forward to this, most definitely. It has been too long since we have been away from sports. It feels like a long time, but it's only been a couple months. But that's long enough. I would imagine there won't be any fans, but that's okay. We don't need that. I read a little story. They're talking about trying to put some mics in to mic the players up to give some dialogue that'll be entertaining for the people, to say the least. You might want to think about putting some censor filters in, because that language is going to be filthy. But yeah, this is where we're at now. But come July, it's going to be survival of the fittest. The Clippers, the Bucks, Sixers, Lakers, Rockets. It's going to be showtime. And I'm definitely looking forward to that. So, we're getting there. we're getting back to normal. Hopefully, we'll get a football season. But anywho, uh, that's gonna wrap things up for this week. Everybody that tuned in, everybody listening, I appreciate every last one of you guys. I'll say it as much as I can. It's great to be back. It was tough for me to try to speak on something sports related or anything like that. Kind of go off of what's been going on, but rejuvenated. I'm back at it. I needed to get out and talk the talk like I do. So yeah, everybody that supports, I appreciate you guys, and check the pages out. It's on YouTube, The Havoc Hour, Instagram, Facebook. It's all up there. So I appreciate you guys, and we're gonna work on getting my first interview. My guy Josh, Mr. Scattered by Design. Go make sure you cop that book on Amazon, Scattered by Design too. If you're into poetry, that's a masterclass. Scattered by Design 1 and 2. Make sure you go get your copies. Also, make sure you are checking in and tuning into the Young Kings Wrestling Podcast with my boys TC and Malik. You know what I'm saying? I'm the third man on the ship there. We will be doing some content later this week because NXT TakeOver is tonight. TakeOver in your house, you wrestling fans out there. So that's going to be a phenomenal show. I expect it to be off the chain. So yeah, tune into that tonight. Check out Young Kings Wrestling Podcast. All my people out there, my fellow podcasters, my media constituents, y'all know who y'all are. I love y'all, appreciate y'all, and we're definitely gonna link up when all this madness is over. So that's been the show. Thanks for tuning in. This has been Wreak Havoc. I'm signing off. I will see you next week. Peace.